begin our meeting. I want to welcome all of you to the Board of Zoning Appeals, Madison, for November 12th, 2024. And Mr. Secretary, could we have the roll call?
Scott Baldwin,
Here.
Mark Acosta,
Here.
Nancy Burkhart,
Here.
Rick Ferris,
Here.
Carl Eaglin.
Normally we would approve the minutes, but for various reasons they're not available at this meeting, so we will approve them next time. So we move on. Renewals of conditional use permits. Board members, there were 6 this time. Number 1, Baird Homes. Number 2, Philip and Angela Lobb. Number 3, Paul Francis. Number 5, Deborah Watkins. And number 6, Ahmed Alkuma. Have all paid their renewal fees, no complaints. Therefore, I move that we renew these conditional use permits.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. They are renewed. There is one, number 4, Samantha Greer. It was a conditional use permit for short-term rentals, 233 West First Street. As of the meeting, has not paid her renewal fee. And therefore, I move we instruct our attorney to send her the usual letter that her fee is in arrears. However, if she pays it by our next regular meeting, it will be renewed. That's my motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. And our renewals are cared for. We have one tabled application, BZVD-24-43. Applicant is Jeffrey Fagan, requesting a variance from developmental standards for a lot located at 2342 East Cross Road, zoned residential agriculture. And Mr. Fagan, if you could come up. We tabled it last time because of mass confusion, frankly. You're requesting, your lot currently is about 0.83 acres.
Right.
And you explained, sure, for my satisfaction anyway, you explained that back in the 1950s, somebody had just pounded pegs in the ground and laid it out.
Great.
And I thought that was, that's the way they did
Yeah,
it.
that's what they did. Just went down, put 4 pegs in the ground and called it an acre. And they might have meant for 8/10s, got it right. I don't know.
And it was even before the 1966 zoning ordinance, which is
Exactly.
the first one I know of.
It's in 53.
But now you're asking for that lot to be split down into, I understand, 125 by 180 feet,
Yes.
which,
Makes it like 4/10 of an acre.
right,
Right at almost half an acre.
it's about 4/10 of an acre. And the problem is, this is residential agriculture, which requires 1 acre lots.
Right. There's like 6 other homes within the 8th mile that are in the buffer zone for sure. And they're all 4/10 to maybe half an acre. They've been built long since 1966.
Yeah, I looked those up on the GIS. There are a number of them. Some of them seem to actually be similar to yours. There was 2196 East Cross Road was kind of a large 4+ acre thing, where in the northeast corner 2 parcels, 2236 and 2214, their half acres were split off. And that seemed to have been done a long time ago.
It was probably about 26 years ago.
There is one at 3003 North Jefferson Lake Road, 0.67 acres. Was done, who knows, a long time ago. The GIS only goes back to, I believe, 1999. There was one at 2069 East Cross Road, 0.75 acres. And that's an interesting one because the same guy owns an adjoining lot of .27 acres under the same name. That one dates back to 1990. So you put them together and you have your acre. And I also looked at your neighboring property to the east. You plan on acquiring 18.3 acres of
Yes.
that. GIS says that's 20 point.
It is, I'm gonna buy it, then I'm gonna break off 2 acres where the house and barn is. I'll have that divided off, then just keep the property, the land.
And of course, that would be perfectly conforming to the zoning ordinance. So having reviewed all this, what you're asking for is a non-conforming property. I'm only speaking for myself, not the other board members. You're asking for a non-conforming property of roughly a half acre, when personally I don't see that that's been done in recent times, perhaps even under the 81 zoning ordinance that wasn't done. And you're gonna, by purchasing your eastern neighbor's property, you're gonna create a conforming lot of 2.5 acres. So that's my problem with it. It's the conforming to the zoning ordinance and creating a precedent. Because we gotta face it, Madison's growing and people are gonna wanna put up more houses.
Madison growing is not my fault. Like I said, there's several other properties out there that's non-conforming.
Exactly, and I tried to answer that from what I can figure out without actually going to the courthouse, those properties were made non-conforming perhaps before the 1981 zoning ordinance.
So is my little house, is built in 53.
Exactly. A lot of this seems to me to have been done about then when there was no zoning ordinance. But we now have a zoning ordinance, and it's very plain language, 1 acre.
And when I built the house where I'm currently living, I was not in the buffer zone. And now somehow the buffer zone has went from the property to the west of me, all the way to the farm, including the one on the east. I don't know if somebody's made the wrong mark or what's happened, but somehow I got inside the buffer zone.
Well, that's a whole nother issue.
And I've asked anybody and their brother about it, and yeah, that's what I get. It's another issue, and there's nowhere to go.
I'm also viewing this from the point of view of this little board is called a quasi-judicial board.
Correct.
That means we're sort of judges, and everything we do can be appealed to, like, typically, I suppose, it's the circuit court. And so, from my personal point of view, I hate to open a can of worms, a can of judicial worms, by approving something that I'm not certain is being done, especially when your plans are to create a legal size lot. I have no problems with the .83 acre size, given that was totally out of your control. But board members, of course, I'm gonna ask you what your thoughts and opinions are on this matter.
What
explained
I
mine.
understand this application to be is strictly asking to bring the .813 acre lot into conformance. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is not what my intentions are now. Right now, I'm in compliance, in my opinion. It's .83. If it's split, it's still split. I'm still in compliance. I don't understand your 1 acre thing. I know
As
we're
a
talking about buffer zone.
.813
Yes.
lot is not compliant.
Okay, so
Correct.
if it's not compliant, what does that mean for me? You're saying my lot's not compliant. I don't understand.
Your application is to bring that lot into
That
compliance.
is not what my intentions were.
If you're asking permission to split the lot, you're at the wrong meeting. We don't.
So
We don't do that.
I'll give context. So essentially, he needs to bring the lot to conformance in order to complete the sale, because you can't sell a lot that doesn't meet the zoning ordinance.
Right.
That
I'm
lot
not
is,
selling the lot, I'm selling the house and the property with it.
yeah, the house, but
The lot is gonna be part of the 18 plus the 6 plus the 3. It's gonna be like 24 acre field.
What he's explaining though is before you can do any of that,
has to be brought into
the
conformance.
.813 lot has to be in compliance, or
If I keep it at .38 acre, I can still sell it. You tell me I can't sell my house if I don't do that?
No, we're not telling you you
Okay.
can't sell your house. And it really, the problem is the zoning ordinance, you're zoned residential agriculture.
Okay.
And there are requirements. You can easily go to the office and see the zoning
I've
ordinance.
got all the, I've read all of the stuff. I really wish you did it so you could put it up there on the monitor so the whole world can read it. We're all at the same time reading what you have and be able to look at G1S is what we need here. But as far as splitting the property, what do you want to do?
You're asking for a variance.
Yes.
The definition of a variance, I'll just read it right out of the zoning ordinance. A modification of the strict terms of the relevant regulations of the ordinance, where such modification will not be contrary to the public interest and where, owing to conditions peculiar to the property and not the result of the action of the applicant, the literal enforcement of this ordinance and regulations would result in unnecessary and undue hardship. And were this to go to a court above us, the judge is going to read that same thing. It's the way the legal system works. So that's what a variance is. It means that there are, in residential agriculture, the lot size is 1 acre. But sometimes things arise that are peculiar, like bizarrely shaped lots, fall-offs, rivers, wetlands that intrude on it, and the guy that owns it, who never made the problem in the first place, like your .832 acre lot, you never made that. That was in 1953.
Exactly.
So you bought the lot, well, nobody's gonna hold you to that against you, but now, through the action of the applicant, just by personal preference, of wanting to cut that lot down smaller so that your house, which is way back to the south, and you have a very narrow kind of a strip where your driveway is, and you just wanted to see up there to the north.
For that narrow strip, what is required as far as road frontage?
There is a requirement, I believe
Yeah,
it's 150
foot.
feet. It's
150
150
foot.
feet.
So how did I ever build a house back here if I was in the buffer zone with a 25-foot wide strip? How'd that happen?
Well, that I
Because
can't
I was not in
answer
the
you.
buffer zone at the time.
You'd have to answer that. It was probably part of the property before you ever bought it, wasn't it?
I bought that from the farm that I'm currently buying also now.
And that was probably laid out long before there were zoning ordinances or anything like that.
It was
Is
26
that-
years ago.
Well, 26 years ago would have been under the 1981 ordinance.
Exactly. That's why I say I wasn't in the buffer zone back then. Now I am.
Well, that
But
one is,
what I'd like to do is just go ahead, you all vote, and let's move on with it.
Again, the way I read your application, you're asking to bring the existing property in conformance, which I
I
think
did not
nobody has,
write that.
which I don't think anybody has a problem with.
Yeah.
But you're, as far as splitting the lot,
Yeah.
this board doesn't do that.
Which board do I need
I
to
assume
be
that'd be
at?
the planning commission, correct?
Yeah. So
So,
the lot is less than 1 acre. So if he wanted to submit, if you submitted, hypothetically a building permit for a shed or something, I can't approve that from zoning because it doesn't meet the restrictions in the ordinance. So, it needs to be brought into conformance for basically anything for me to, approve it from the zoning standpoint. That's what the variance for that land acreage.
So what we need to do is
Right.
approve your lot to be brought into conformance. That allows you then to go and apply for whatever you want to do with that property. But this board does not approve or disapprove splitting and, how you want to separate your land. That's the planning commission would handle that.
All right.
Any other?
But we need to, before you can do that, we need to say, yes, we, go through our process, but we have to bring you into compliance.
So Ray, that would be his next step to go to planning commission.
Yeah, it has to be brought into conformance before you can go before the planning commission for that split.
The only way I can bring it into compliance is add land to it.
Right, but you might not have to worry about that if your .83, which I don't think anybody has a problem, I'm not speaking for them, I don't think you have a problem with that being conformed. But then you would go to planning commission if you want to split those parcels up like you want to with the .51. Do you get where we're going there?
Yes.
Okay,
I do,
yeah, it's just a process.
it is a process.
Easy as try.
Anybody else on the board want to make a comment, one way or the other? Would anybody in the audience like to speak for or against this proposed variance? Well, hearing none, one last chance, board members. Would our lawyer like to say anything?
I am, that's what brought me here. I won't break it all. He wanted me to come down here and make sure and see what I was doing.
We're trying to help you.
Oh, yeah, I'm with you.
So your next step after this is gonna be go get a survey?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I need.
But unless I need to get some more,
I think once
Thank
you
you.
get this, the surveyor will be able to draw it the way you need it.
Yeah, so the survey will show where you want to annex that lot to the one east of the property. Yeah, this is just bringing it into conformance so that we can get to that next step.
I'm good.
Any other comments, board members? Well, then we will move on to our findings of fact. Thank you, sir. You can have a seat. And this variance is to approve the .832 acre lot size to give a variance from developmental standards for the existing I think it's 832, the existing lot as it is. Number one, is this injurious to the public health, safety, morals, general welfare? Mr. Acosta.
No, don't see that in any way.
Mr. Ferris.
No, I don't believe it is.
Mrs. Burkhart.
No, I see no problem with that.
And I see no problem there either. Number two, this is about use and value of adjacent properties badly affected. Mr. Acosta.
No, most of the adjacent properties, the gentleman's property and the property he's purchasing, so.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the adjoining property is owned by the applicant.
Mrs.
No, I
Burkhart.
see no problem with that one either.
And it's been that way for, good heavens, 50 years. That one's more than met. Number three, strict application will result in practical difficulties in use of property. What are they? Mr. Acosta.
I think as staff explained, it kind of handcuffs him on doing what he wants to with the land. And this is not an uncommon situation we run into with older properties that were established before the zoning ordinance.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Costa's comments, but I would also add that, that there is a rarity in this that we're dealing with circumstances of a property that were built and laid out many, many years ago, and zoning regulations, and as one who lives in the buffer zone as well, now being included in the buffer zone, whereas before maybe he wasn't, just add some complexity that I think this board can help simplify that with the right decision.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree with Mr. Ferris's comments.
Practical difficulties, the applicant has plans of what he wants to do, of acquiring properties, putting them together. He can't do it without bringing the original property in conformance with the ordinance. So I think that one is amply met. We've gone through our findings of fact. We have a motion. I move we approve the variance of developmental standards for the lot at 2342 East Cross Road to be 0.83 acres.
Second.
And we have a roll call?
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And sorry about my confusion.
Oh, don't worry. These matters get very confusing in a town that's been here since 1809.
Yeah, you're after I was born.
Moving on to new applications, BZCD-24-45, Jeffrey Shields, requesting variance from developmental standards for setbacks, 309 Jefferson Street, Central Business District. And yes, sir, if you could come up and tell what you plan to do and what your problem is.
We're wanting to use the property for short-term rental, I guess the upstairs property, right, this apartment above. And my understanding is we need a zero setback variance for that.
Due to just the overall proximity to the adjacent properties, they have no setbacks whatsoever.
So you're in the thing that happens a lot. You're downtown. The ordinance requires 3-foot setbacks. You're in a building built in 1840, whatever. Nobody dreamed about setbacks. You want to do something, and we run into this almost every meeting.
And the current existing structure has zero setbacks already, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Board members, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, this is basically bringing this property into conformance. basically.
Correct.
Yeah.
Would anybody, any other questions, comments, board members?
You know, if we go through enough of these, maybe we'll get the whole city of Madison back into conformance.
2 down.
2 down.
And he does have a point. As often as we've done this, the whole city will have a variance before too many more years. Would anybody in the audience like to speak for or against this application?
This property touches my property, so I don't have an objection.
One last chance, board members? Okay. Being this is a variance, the variances from an ordinance are, in my view, a big deal, so that's why we'll go through our 3 criteria, which are dictated by the state of Indiana. We didn't make this up. Number 1, will this injure, you can have a seat, sir.
Okay.
Will this injure the public health, safety, morals, general welfare? Mr. Acosta.
No, I don't see it changing anything.
Mr. Ferris.
Nope, I don't believe it will.
Mrs. Burkhart.
No, I don't see a problem.
The building's been there for a long time. The general welfare has not been harmed. I think that's met. Number 2, affecting use and value of adjacent properties badly. Mr. Acosta.
No, again, granting this variance doesn't change any of those situations.
Mr. Ferris.
No, I mean, the property already has, by default, 0 feet setback, so just approving this application will just bring it into conformance.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree with that comment.
We've already heard testimony from an adjacent property owner who had no problems. I think that one's met. Number 3, practical difficulties in the use of the property. Mr. Acosta.
Now, as previous applicant just ties his hands on doing anything. It's not changing the existing structure in any way. It's just, as we see so many times in downtown where small, narrow lots and, you know, the variances, or I'm sorry, the setbacks don't make sense.
Mrs. Burkhart, or excuse me, Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Mr. Acosta said. It's an old downtown property that, you know, has setback, there were no zoning requirements. So, I think the age of the property is the peculiarity in this case.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, that property has been there for a long time, we're just bringing it into conformance.
And I agree with Mrs. Burkhart. I think she put it very well. I move we approve this variance from developmental standards for application BZCD-24-25.
Second.
We have a roll call?
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. Well, we wish you well, sir. Number 2 on the agenda, BZCU-24-62, Darcy Leesburg, requesting a conditional use permit for a convenience store containing restaurant with a drive-through fuel station located 1200 Clifty Drive, residential agriculture. Yes, sir.
Good evening. John
If you could-
LaPointe, 3708 Swan Boulevard, Tampa, Florida.
And could you explain your project and,
Sure,
go ahead.
sure. First, we're very excited to be here. Looking to take steps to put a convenience store with gasoline with a food component to it as well. Just as a matter of note, it's a drive-through, but it's an order up window. So there is no squawk box, no order station. When your order is ready, you get a text and you drive up, pick it up at the window. So we're just looking here. The site is zoned N2. We're doing a conditional use versus rezoning the property, very similar to the surrounding uses. We have general business to the southeast, M1 to the northwest. Our site currently sits M2, so we believe we're harmonious with the current development. And just here to answer any questions you guys might have.
Board members, do you have any questions, comments? And this is your site plan.
Yes, it is.
I will note that they've already received approval for the accessible parking at the last, at the Plan Commission meeting, the previous one.
Are you leasing this land long-term or?
No,
you
it would be
own
a purchase.
It's being purchased.
Yeah, and it'd be contingent on us subdividing our 3.6 or so acres that we have out there.
So in other words, you're planning on this station being there 20, 30 years, whatever?
Yes, hopefully longer.
What's
You have a
going-
lot of history here. I've seen it across this wall, so hopefully we're part of it.
What's going to be the name of this?
I'd like to tell you, but I really can't right yet.
So you can't
But they're
say-
around in the area. It shouldn't take much to try to figure out what it is.
So you can't tell if it's a mobile station or a shell or?
No, I don't want to get into the gas wars right yet.
Any other?
I think you'd be very happy, though. I'll put it that way.
Any other questions, board members? And there was an issue, last meeting, some folk brought up an issue of drainage of water. And I assume you have to meet IDEM, Indiana Department of Environmental Management, are in on your plans for your drainage water and runoff and like that.
Yes, we'll meet every city, state requirements.
So it's not just city of Madison's gonna deal with your drainage. It's the state of Indiana inspectors and so
Yeah,
forth.
and IDOT, so.
And you did, in your application, say IDOT had approved your plans for entrance into the thing?
Yeah, they preliminary approved it. Obviously, we have to go through the permitting process, but we have met with them, discussed the site plan, talked about the access points, and they're in agreement with the ones shown in the plan.
And you plan, sounded in the last meeting like you plan to have semis going in and out?
Well, there's food delivery trucks as well as fuel delivery trucks, so we, plan accordingly for that with radiuses and throat depths and widths of drive aisles, so.
So it's just the normal kind of semis that you would see in a gas station?
Yeah, very similar to the Casey's to the southwest.
So it's not a truck stop kind
No,
of
no,
thing?
yeah, no high-speed diesel. Not a truck stop. That I will go on record as saying.
And any, I assume, well, your site plan, your building plans will, if there's any landscaping or fencing required, then that'll all be part of it?
Yes, we're not seeking any variances. So we'll meet all land development codes for both, like I said, city, state.
And I did hear you say that you're gonna actually abide by Madison's parking lot. or
Yes, we
parking
did.
space size.
I don't know how many times you've probably seen that variance, but.
Several.
Yeah. We went with the 22 by 10.
I'm tired of measuring parking spaces.
Done that plenty. Any other questions or comments, board members? Would anyone in the audience like to speak for or against this proposed conditional use permit?
I do have another question.
Yes.
So, in our normal process of granting a conditional use permit, we usually grant them for a period of 1 year. I'm guessing you're probably gonna want something longer than that?
If possible. I mean, we'll follow the procedure if that's the only mechanism we can, just like I said. But there's a way to extend it longer, just to keep it from having to come renew every year. We would be.
Well, how long do you think before you get it going? How long to build it and get it going though?
I'd probably say 270 days.
So it's way less than a year. To answer your question, Mr. Acosta, I had thought about that issue too, that this is just another gas station, convenience store kind of a thing, and it's in an industrial area where it's, frankly, where it should be. There are no residences much around there, very little opportunity for disruption of people's lives and properties. So I had thought about what you asked as well. Board members, anything else?
Thank you.
We will go through our findings of fact. Conditional use permit.
We do yeses.
And let's see. There we go. This is a conditional use permit under categories 553, gasoline service station, and retail eating place 582. So number one, are these the correct categories for this? Mr. Acosta,
Yes.
Mr. Ferris,
Yes, I believe they are.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
Yes.
And I agree, they are the proper ones. Number two, is this harmonious with the comprehensive plan and so forth? Mr. Acosta.
Yeah, I believe so. More services offered to the citizens and visitors, so, yeah, I see no issue with that.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I believe it is. I mean, we're pro-business.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
Yeah, those categories are allowed with conditional use.
And since they are in section 7, which lays out what the zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan are, that one's met. Number 3, harmonious, appropriate in appearance with the character of the general vicinity, won't change the character. Mr. Acosta.
No, it'll be similar to other properties right in the immediate area. makes use of a vacant area that, quite frankly, has gone unused for quite some time, so.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Mr. Acosta.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
I agree with those comments.
It's another gas station in an area with gas stations and stores. I think that's the general area. Number 4, this is hazardous, disturbing to neighboring uses. Mr. Acosta.
No, like I said, similar businesses in the immediate area, so, no disruption or hazard.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I think it fits in, very well with the neighborhood.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
I agree, it's similar to other businesses in the area.
And I think that one's met. I can't see it disturbing anything. Number 5, this is about sufficient utilities. Mr. Acosta.
Yeah, no issue, the area is serviced very well.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, it's on 2 main thoroughfares. I think, all services will be, sufficient.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
I see no issues with that one.
And it's amply met. It's on one of the main entrances to Madison. All those things are in abundance. Number 6, this is about requirements at public expense. Doesn't hurt the welfare of the community. Mr. Acosta.
I see no impact at that. If anything, maybe a benefit to the welfare of the community.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see any, excessive public expense, and I do think it will serve the community.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
I agree with those comments.
It's another business. I see no harm to our economic welfare. Number 7, this is about too much production of traffic noise, smoke, glare, odors, etc. Mr. Acosta.
No, I see no issue with any of those.
Mr. Ferris.
No, I don't think there's any issues there.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
No, I don't see a problem with that.
And I agree. There will be no problems here. Number 8, this is not interfering with traffic. Mr. Acosta.
I don't see any issues. You mentioned NDOT's already approved the entrances and the flows, so I don't see any impact with that.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I think, the applicant has already done their homework and gotten approval for that, so I think all conditions are met.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
I agree that all conditions are met.
If it's good enough for NDOT, it's good enough for me. Number 9, this is about loss of historic features and so on. Mr. Acosta.
No, it's going to take basically an open lot and become useful to the community. So.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree with, Mr. Acosta.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
I see no problem with that one either.
And I know of no natural scenic historic features there, so I think that one's met. We've gone through our findings of fact. I move we approve a conditional use permit for this application for a period of 30 years. My reason being this is a legitimate long-term business.
I second that.
We have a roll call.
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhardt,
Yes.
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. Sir, you have your conditional use permit.
Thank you very much. We're excited to move forward.
Number 3 on the agenda, BZCU-24-64, Candace Carpenter, requesting conditional use permit for short-term rental, 715 East Main Street, Historic District Residential. So if someone would come up and address this, if you kindly give your name and address for the record.
Scott Lynch, 1800 Valley Vista Drive, Madison. And I'm representing Candace Carpenter in her purchase of 715 East Main Street. And they're going to continue to operate it in its current use, which is a short-term rental, Airbnb, that simple.
And that's right out there, almost right next to the Victoria Inn, isn't it?
Yeah, it's real close to the hillside, the old hillside inn.
Hillside Inn and
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah.
And as you noticed, February 14th of 2022, there was a short-term rental approved for the previous owners. And you have submitted house rules.
Just to clarify, they just have to apply again because the conditional use
It-
doesn't carry over.
Yeah, it expires when the new owner.
Understood.
At least for me, always the big issue is noise and parking. And I think you have adequate parking around there. And your application included rules. And the main rules there concern hours of operation, which I believe was, or quiet hours, excuse me. Quiet hours were
10 to 8.
quiet hours 10 p.m. to 8 a.m., which I believe conforms to our noise ordinance, maximum 2 vehicles, no parties or events. There's similar rules to what others have done, and we've had one complaint so far about Airbnbs. And that, I think, was one specific customer that brought on that complaint. Board members, any questions, comments?
Scott, is there gonna be somebody local to manage it in case there's a problem?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments, board members? Would anyone remaining in the audience, obviously not going to speak against it? Board members, in light of the fact that just 2 years ago, there was an identical use for this, we went through our conditional use permit 9 findings of fact. The rules are about the same as what they were. There's a history that apparently staff has never brought up any problems with previous. If it's all right with you, I'm just going to go through the 9 things and ask if anybody has any objections.
Good.
In as much as this is continuing the same use with a new owner. Number 1, any objections?
No.
No.
Number 2, any objections?
No.
No.
Number 3, any objections?
No.
No.
Number 4, any
No.
objections?
Nope.
Number 5, utilities, any objections?
Nope.
No.
Number 6, public expense, any objections?
Nope.
No.
Number 7, excessive noise, smoke, etc. Any
No.
objections?
No.
Number 8, traffic interference, any objections?
No.
Number 9, loss of scenic natural historic features.
Nope.
No.
And I would note there, they're simply continuing to preserve a nice old historic building. This time, we take a motion.
I move we approve the conditional use permit, 715 East Main Street for 1-year renewal.
Second.
We have a roll call.
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. Sir, you have your conditional use. We wish you well. Moving on, that takes care of our new business. Old business, number 2, Jessica Lawless, New Life Fellowship, is no longer going to do a daycare ministry, so she's requested that expire. Number 1, Lena Burns, that was a conditional use permit for a daycare, 124 Crestwood Drive. Was there any contact or any?
I wasn't able to get in contact with her. No, I called last week and I called again today. Still wasn't able to get in contact with anyone.
Number 4 on the list, Aaron Wood, he paid, so his conditional use permit is renewed. Number 3, Steve Buchanan, 2587 Cragmont. That was first approved in October of 2018. Was there any contact there?
No. Well, no, I tried to contact him, but I wasn't able to
You
reach
were
him.
unable, yeah.
Is that for the laser tag?
Laser, yes.
That's no longer
I'll say, I don't remember
active.
that being there.
Okay, so just for the record, that one is no longer active. And number 5 on the list, well, before we go there, get too confused here. Number 1, Lena Burns. I move we instruct our attorney to send her a letter indicating that her conditional use has expired, and if she wishes to continue in business, she will be able to if she pays a renewal fee by our next regular meeting, or otherwise she will have to reapply. That's my motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Laser tag is out. Karen P. Woods paid. And the last one, Ellen Troutman, was a conditional use permit for an event center, short-term rental, 402 West Main. Did anybody?
No, I'm not even sure if it even rang. I think that line might be disconnected. I wasn't able to reach anyone though.
I can try to get hold of her. I think I know how to get hold of her.
All right,
I can take care of that. If you want to make a motion like you normally do, but I'll reach out to her personally.
I move we instruct our attorney to contact Ellen Troutman to check on her status, and if she pays her renewal fee by our next regular meeting, her permit will be renewed.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Have I omitted anything?
You got everything.
Done.
Well, then I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are adjourned.
Adjourn.
Does this meet your
Hey.
approval?
Hey, Ray, this was left, up there. I don't know what that is exactly, but